Anytime Israel says something, it's questioned. Anytime the Palestinians say something, it's believed. And the whole world knows as clear as the sun rises and sets on a day that Iran is the central factor here fueling all of this fire all over the Middle East. And yet sanctions have been relieved. You know, we're nervous about issuing strongly worded statements, but that's about all we do. And our military sits in the Red Sea, supposedly to keep this stuff from happening.
Welcome to Stakelbeck Tonight. I'm Erick Stakelbeck, and we are living through one of the most dangerous periods in American history right now. And it's not over yet. We have now seen 2 assassination attempts against Donald Trump in the past 2 months alone. And we've still got 50 days to go until the election on November 5th. The latest attempt against the former president's life came on Sunday afternoon when he was playing golf at Trump International in West Palm Beach. 58-year-old Ryan Wesley Ralph was somehow able to point the muzzle of an AK-47 rifle through a fence less than 500 yards away from President Trump. Thank God a Secret Service agent saw Ralph and fired at him, and the would-be assassin was arrested as he tried to flee. He left behind the rifle, a GoPro camera, and a backpack. Now, you may be asking, how was Ralph able to get so close to Trump, especially after the epic Secret Service and security fail in Butler, Pennsylvania on July 13th, when Thomas Matthew Crooks was able to plant himself on a nearby roof in plain view and squeeze off several shots at the former president with one bullet hitting his ear. You'd think there would be a massive security ramp up around President Trump after that, but apparently not. Here's Palm Beach County Sheriff Rick Bradshaw after yesterday's incident.
Well, you got to understand the golf course is surrounded by shrubbery. So when somebody gets into the shrubbery, they're pretty much out of sight. All right. And at this level that he is at right now, he's not the sitting president. If he was, we would have had this entire golf course surrounded. But because he's not, the security is limited to the areas that the Secret Service deems possible. So I would imagine that the next time he comes to the golf course, there'll probably be a little bit more people around the perimeter.
Interesting. So there will probably be a few more people around the perimeter next time. Because remember, Donald Trump isn't a sitting president right now. Gee, thanks, Sheriff. And thank you to the Biden administration, which has poured money into any number of useless initiatives, but can't seem to scrounge up a few extra bucks to provide enhanced security for a man who the forces of evil everywhere are obsessed with taking out. If you need a reminder, here's a video posted on the website of Iran's supreme leader in 2022. It shows the Iranian regime assassinating President Trump on a golf course. Folks, Iran's leaders have made very clear that they want to kill President Trump and former members of his administration. They want revenge for the death of Iranian terror master Qasem Soleimani, which Trump ordered back in 2020. This is no joke. We have seen Iranian operatives indicted by the U.S. government for plotting to kill former Trump administration officials on U.S. soil. Needless to say, Iran does not want to see Donald Trump back in the White House. Neither does ISIS after Trump crushed their caliphate in Iraq and Syria during his time in office. And neither do the radical left and Antifa types, the charming lads who you see burning American and Israeli flags in our streets and cheerleading for Hamas. Folks, all of the above are evil, demonic forces. They hate Donald Trump and have every reason to want to target him. And then we have, of course, mentally deranged individuals who hear constant rhetoric from Democrats that Trump is a Hitler clone and a threat to democracy who must be stopped before he destroys our country. Add it all up, and sadly, these 2 attempts on Trump's life are no surprise. And again, we've still got 50 days to go until the election, and no real desire, it seems, by the current administration to beef up the security around Trump. This is where you and I come in. You might say, how? What can I do? You can pray. because prayer works. Pray for a divine hedge of protection around Donald Trump and his family. Whether you like Trump and plan to vote for him, or you don't like Trump, this is a man who's quite literally in the crosshairs. And he doesn't need this. He could be retired on an island right now enjoying his grandkids instead of being indicted and shot at and seeing his name dragged through the mud by the media every day. Yet he keeps fighting. I said at the top that this is one of the most dangerous periods in American history. And there are many unanswered questions about these two assassination attempts that we'll dig into more in the days to come. In the meantime, know this: November looms large. It's faith, family, and freedom, or socialism, secularism, and separation. These are the choices that lay before the American people. There's really no gray area here. Coming up, we'll unpack this more and also break down some major events in Israel from over the weekend. And it all starts now. What were your first impressions when you saw yet another assassination attempt against President Trump yesterday? And to me, and you pointed this out on your X account, Johnny, look, the would-be assassin lurking around the property at Trump International for some 12 hours before he's finally seen and obviously detained by authorities. But dangerous times and the lack of security around President Trump is stunning.
Yeah, I mean, the most important piece of information that we got yesterday on this was when the sheriff of Palm Beach County said something in passing, but it was very, very clear that if Donald Trump was the sitting president of the United States, he would have had more protection, which tells us that we're still in a situation where the former president of the United States, who's now had 2 assassination attempts on his life, this potential assassin came there to kill the former president. He lurked in the bushes for 12 hours, and no one saw him until minutes before the former president, was just going to walk by on the golf course. Like, every single American, Democrat or Republican, should be irate. We need answers now, and this cannot happen again.
And yet there's not the widespread anger, it seems, Johnny, at least on the left, that there should be, and we're not getting the answers. We still don't have answers from the July 13th attempt on Trump's life. I said in the intro that evil forces are aligned against this one man. Johnny, getting to the root of it, this is a spiritual battle, and it seems to be intensifying. Why? Why such an obsession? Why such a demonic hatred against Donald Trump? Whether it's deranged individuals like we saw yesterday, whether it's the Iranian regime, ISIS, the Antifa types, why all the focus on this one man?
Well, I think there's a natural and there's a spiritual element to that question. I mean, there's a verse in the Bible that has occurred to me a lot in recent days, which is that the enemy has blinded the eyes of those who don't believe. And of course, that's not a verse for the context of political matters. That's has something to do with something else. But I think, generally speaking, the fact that there is a type of unbelievable blindness that is gripping the country. I mean, all you had to do is look at the newspapers today. Most of the newspapers today don't mention, or if they do mention, they don't give the attention that it deserves. That the former president was nearly assassinated again yesterday. It should be dawn to dusk coverage on every network. Should be the front of every paper. I mean, the USA Today, which is the most circulated paper in the United States, doesn't even mention it. In fact, the cover story today, totally absurdly, says "Hope in America." And I think personally, and I think a lot of people believe this, that for whatever reason, God's ways are higher than our ways. But for whatever reason, the God of the universe, the maker of human beings, the person who has sustained all of us through all of history, has decided to save the former president of the United States twice. I don't like to over spiritualize things. I'm not. That's not my theological inclination. But what we saw now again is a miracle. And yet, at the same token, we need to demand that we pay tax dollars to protect our leaders, to secure this country. Right. We don't only have foreign threats to the United States, we have domestic threats. And we saw it yesterday, and the world's still hardly paying attention to it.
Yeah. Johnny, about 30 seconds until the break. Well said, by the way. Look, you served on President Trump's Evangelical Advisory Council. You know the man. Can you tell us now, just to encourage people, it is a dark time in our history, no doubt. Can you just remind people, I should say, why it's so important right now to pray? And just a reminder, prayer really works. And you mentioned the miracle, the miraculous, I can't say dodging a bullet the first time, but preserving his life on both of these attempts when it comes to Donald Trump. How big of a factor does prayer play in that hedge of protection around the president and what's coming for our country in November?
You know, just a few days before this event this weekend, I was on a phone call with 8,000 pastors all across America, and we were on the phone with former President Donald Trump. And 4 pastors prayed for former President Donald Trump. After 2 prayers, the organizer of the call said to former President Trump, "We understand that you have to go. You can go. We're just going to continue praying." And former President Trump interrupted that person and said, "No, I'll stay for the rest of the prayers." And by the way, I pray every day, not just for former President Donald Trump. I pray for President Biden. I pray for all of our leaders. This is what we do as Christians, because really, really bad people want to destroy America. And this is a country blessed by God.
The Iran-backed Houthi rebels of Yemen launched a ballistic missile at Israel on Sunday. Now, thankfully, Israel intercepted this missile in midair, but it was traveling over central Israel. And folks, it was most likely headed towards Tel Aviv. Obviously, a very dangerous incident. And it seems that Iran's proxies, like the Houthis, are increasingly emboldened. So what comes next with this ring of fire that surrounds Israel on all sides? And why does it matter to you, no matter where you live? Our good friend Johnnie Moore is with us. Johnnie, look, you've been in Israel many, many times, of course. You've been there in the wake, in the aftermath of October 7th. Israel's got a front in Gaza, obviously, against Hamas to the south, facing a major war in the north with Hezbollah in Lebanon. The Houthis in Yemen are really becoming a thorn in the side, not only for the Jewish state, but for the U.S. and the entire region. Tell us more about why this attack yesterday by the Houthis, and thank God it failed, but still, why it was so significant.
Well, first of all, I mean, both failed attacks this weekend, which, you know, were the news stories that captivated the world. The one targeting former President Trump, a near assassination, and also what happened in Israel. The common link is Iran. I mean, you know, 2 years ago, the leader of Iran tweeted a video out of a drone flying over Donald Trump's golf course. The perpetrator of this attempted assassination had written in a privately published book that he hoped Iran assassinated the former president. He had communicated with people in Iran. We know that because the guy was interviewed with the New York Times, you know, when he was in Europe. So Iran is the common link. But what happened in Israel this weekend was a major escalation. And it's like radio silence from the United States government and European governments. I mean, you had a ballistic missile supplied to the Houthis by Iran that was fired into central Israel. This was the most advanced type of ballistic missile that has targeted central Israel. And right now, the United States military has like the vast majority of our naval resources in the Red Sea. We're told for defensive purposes. And yet we didn't shoot that ballistic missile out of the sky as it flew thousands of kilometers over the Red Sea towards Israel. It was Israel saving itself. You know, they were lucky to blow it out of the sky, but it was a close call, and shrapnel fell in a number of cities across Israel. And we've been told as Americans that our military is in the Red Sea for defensive purposes to keep this stuff from happening. And you know what? It wasn't us. We didn't shoot it out of the sky. It was Israel that did it, which is unfortunately, and I'm sorry to say this, and I don't mean this as a partisan statement, but a general pattern of behavior from the current administration in Washington, D.C. You know, we're in a situation where anytime Israel says something, it's questioned. Anytime the Palestinians say something, it's believed. And the whole world knows as clear as the sun rises and sets on a day that Iran is the central factor here fueling all of this fire all over the Middle East. And yet sanctions have been relieved. You know, we're nervous about issuing strongly worded statements, but that's about all we do. And our military sits in the Red Sea, supposedly to keep this stuff from happening. I'm not even sure a statement was issued by our military this week.
I don't think it was. Johnny, well said and great point. I don't think it was. And Israel is the first line of defense for the West, not just protecting its own citizens and the citizens of the Middle East, but protecting Americans as that canary in the coal mine, so to speak. Johnny, before the break, we were talking about what's rapidly becoming, it seems, a third front for Israel in Yemen with the Houthis. But the coming Great Northern War, that Lebanon front, Johnny, you've spent a lot of time there in Israel's north, including over the past few months. It seems a question not of if, but when. And Israel has to do something to change the equation in the north with Hezbollah.
Yeah, I mean, the fact of the matter is the world refuses to deal with this issue. The official policy of the United States and Europe is that there has to be a ceasefire in Gaza before there's any attention to the north. It's a failed policy. The situation in the north is only getting worse. 80,000 Israelis displaced, 100,000 rockets, drones, and other munitions have come in from Lebanon into northern Israel. We didn't have to be in this situation, but Israel can't live this way. The Israeli citizens in the north can no longer be displaced. They've been displaced for a year, and so I hope there's not an escalation of the war. God forbid there's a regional war. But if it happens, it's not because of Israel. Israel has to defend its citizens. It's because the entire world refused to deal with this issue. We're tough on Israel, we're easy on Iran, and so Iran's proxies can cause all the chaos they want.
So true. And Johnny, you made a great point. It's simply unsustainable, the current so-called status quo. 80,000 Israelis for nearly a year now. Look, we're coming up on the October 7th anniversary just a few weeks from now. For nearly a year, literally, I've seen it, Johnny, visiting Israel in the past few months. Israelis living out of suitcases in hotels scattered across the country with no clear date for when or if they'll return home to the north. Completely unsustainable. We see the anti-Israel sentiment, Johnny, and with October 7th, again, the anniversary closing in, and we see that dovetailing with anti-Semitic activity growing around the world. You've been calling this out strongly in international bodies, before Congress for years, but it's really intensifying, this hatred for the Jewish people. Tell us why we, as followers of Jesus, as Christians, need to speak up about this. We can't remain silent.
No, we have an obligation to stand up for the Jewish community, and not just for obvious theological reasons, but out of gratitude. I mean, gratitude because as Christians, Jesus is our Savior, okay? Jesus was Jewish. 3/4 of our Bible, the Old Testament, is actually the Hebrew scriptures, okay? The vast majority of people that wrote the Bible that we love, they were all Jewish. Our values, our Christian values, actually they began as Jewish values. That's why we call them Judeo-Christian values. And Eric, you know, as I know, that for centuries, the most virulent anti-Semites in the world were Christian anti-Semites. And so now it's different. There's 700 million evangelicals around the world. We're friends with Israel. We stand up for our Jewish neighbors. But the cause of fighting anti-Semitism is a cause that we all have to fight. And we also have to support Israel. I mean, it has become clear that supporting Israel is a proxy for supporting all of our Western democratic values. And the same countries that are aligned against Israel now, countries like Iran in their alliance with Russia and North Korea and the Chinese Communist Party, all facilitating this brewing potential world war. God forbid we get there. But there's no coincidence that in Iran, it's also a country that's one of the worst persecutors of Christians. In North Korea, a country that persecutes Christians. The Communist Party of China viciously persecutes Christians. And wherever this jihadism that we saw on display with Hamas in Gaza on October 7th, wherever it exists, particularly in Western Africa, it goes after every Jew it can find, and then it goes after the Christians too, and they kill every Muslim friend of either that stands in their way. This is about good and evil. And let me give you a warning, okay? If a politician includes "and" in their phrase when it comes to supporting Israel, if they say this, but this, both and, but, this is a politician who's playing politics with right and wrong and with good and evil. And if you're a Christian and you believe there's good and evil, it's very, very clear the equation that we're looking at around the world. We fight anti-Semitism. We stand up for American values. We stand up for Judeo-Christian values. We support Israel and the Jewish people everywhere. And pay attention, by the way, because a lot of the crazy anti-Semitic professors and students that we all watched on TV last semester, they're back. They weren't fired. They weren't expelled. They're just quiet. And that is a grave, grave travesty that donors and board members and institutions still have to deal with. But they don't want us to know that those people are still there.
But thank God we have you, Reverend Johnnie Moore, sounding the alarm. By the way, one of the world's foremost advocates for the persecuted church. Johnnie, we appreciate you, my friend. And hey, anything we should be looking for now? You're very active on X. Where can we find more of your work?
Follow me on X, but most importantly, pray for America. If not for the grace of God, we're in real trouble. I'm going to call everyone tonight, okay? Tonight, dedicate 1 day a week to fasting and praying for our country. You can do a juice fast, do any kind of fast you want, fast a meal, fast the whole day. This is about the future, and 50 days, pray and fast for America.
Stakelbeck Tonight, my all-new nightly series on current events through a bold biblical lens. Make sure you hit the subscribe button so you never miss an upload, and tap the bell icon so you're notified every time a new video is posted. And don't forget to share your thoughts, insights, and comments below. Thanks for watching, and God bless.